Today we are running
Big skeleton, a little skeleton, and a dog skeleton. Woof.
Welcome back to more SOVL PVP. Today we're putting this skeleton zombie giant list through its paces. Now, I haven't played much Undead Nation, but we're coming up for Halloween. And also, similar to how I pick most of the lists that I choose to run, I was beaten by a very similar list to this. In fact, if you watch my last video, it was piloted by player Zen077, I believe. Very similar to this. They had a Necromancer with the same configuration of spells here. 2 Wolves, Catapult, and only difference being a couple of slightly bigger units of skeleton warriors and then a smaller retinue for the Necromancer. So I was planning on playing that anyway, and then update 0.74 dropped with a host of balance updates, including one to the zombie giant, who not only did the points come down from 100 to 80, but also the wounds went up from 8 to 10. And I already thought this was a pretty nice unit, with putrid stench and 10 wounds, defense 6, just like a really good anvil, really good tar pit. I suppose maybe one reason why you may not have seen this very much is those qualities are ones that actually undead do well anyway, with its kind of big blocks of undead. So maybe you didn't see it, but yeah, really fulfills that role. It reminds me of the Triceratops in Reptilian Kingdoms, where it gets has the mobility to kind of get into combat with something you want it to just tie up for the entirety of the game pretty much. But yeah, I feel like now at 80 points it is a bit of a steal, so I kind of rejigged the list slightly to accommodate that. I think like a lot of undead lists, that are not running the vampire with a really punchy retinue, this list can struggle a bit for damage output, but outside of that, it's pretty well balanced. It's got a bit of shooting just to keep opponents honest, I guess. A bit of mobility with the wolves, who can actually dish out some damage, and then some, really resilient units. This list really likes seeing objectives. Both the skeletons and the zombie giant are really hard to shift off those objectives, and otherwise, like Hex of Ruin is once again really important here for pushing some of that damage through. But with all that said, let's get into some matches.
Good idea.
So in our very first match, we're also able to showcase another highlight from patch 0.74, and that is the introduction of the Minotaur Lord, the new commander for the Goatman. This game has one objective closer to me here, one further away from me here on the right. So I deploy the zombie giant, hoping that Unholy Vigor on the giant will give it enough mobility to maybe get in and tag that on turn 1, knowing that the skeletons here can just walk onto the one that's closer to me. And yeah, let's take a look at my opponent's list. This is a very scary commander. 5 attacks with a 2-hand weapon, 6 skill, 5 power, frenzy, but must be accompanied by a unit of Minotaurs, and as such is pretty expensive. So my opponent only has room left for 15 Goatman warriors, 21 Mongrel pack, and the chariot. My focus for this whole game is going to be dealing with this unit. It's got fairly good mobility, so I'm not going to just be able to avoid it, but I'm hoping that 2 Hex of Ruins are enough to bring this unit down. As we get into this one, fire at the chariot, thinking that is the best target for my catapult, able to take off over half its wounds. My opponent moves over here. My opponent does have final movement, which means I'll have first charge, and I'm actually really worried about this because one thing that a really strong commander is great at is taking out other commanders, because if you didn't know, when two commanding units get into each other, they just fight each other rather than the retinues. And this is going to take out my Necromancer probably in one round of combat, and Raise Dead, Hex of Ruin, Unholy Vigor to a slightly lesser extent, like really important for this list. So thankfully I have first charge, so I should be able to prevent this by charging in with the wolves, kind of sacrificing the wolves, I suppose. I think this was a bit of a mistake. I wanted to put pressure on this objective, pretty much secure the first 50 points. Knowing the chariot would go round, I think I was thinking that the zombie giant could then get in and maybe do some intercepting work, but doesn't have the mobility to get into a flank, and therefore yeah, you may have kind of spotted here this mongrel pack could just come down and would be closer and able to intercept any attempts that this zombie giant makes at charging the chariot. My opponent instead, though, elects to kind of double down on this objective. Don't think it actually mattered because I'm in a position here where I don't actually have charges on either of these from the zombie giant. I guess, point from the center here clips through my walls either way, so neither of these are available to me. So I take this charge first, and here fire at the goatman because there's nothing better to do. I'm kind of happy with this. Should be able to get into just about get into the rear here, and yeah, I do decide though that the wolves put out enough attacks that it's definitely worth popping the Hex of Ruin here. Yeah, Minotaurs, they only have defense 4, so not the tankiest of units. And then over here I kind of decide, well, maybe I'll just abandon this objective. The zombie giant still has Unholy Vigor applied to it, so has the mobility to kind of get the flank down here. I just decide to move knowing my walls are going to go down such a way that the chariot won't be able to charge me, once these units are freed up. And then my opponent's going to have to waste time kind of turning these, moving over here, while all the action is in this half of the map. Pretty happy with the amount of damage I was able to put out. Hex of Ruin putting it 6 up, got really, really nice roll, 8 out of 10 on the 4 ups there. My opponent, even nicer roll, 12 out of 12 on 3 ups. And is, you saw the Minotaur Lord was almost enough to wipe out the unit just on their own. So yeah, pretty scary. However, that slight downside is those Minotaurs on the edges being taken out means that I no longer have the angle for the rear charge, and this is going to be a flank charge. Not huge, the impactful, but slightly frustrating nonetheless. I choose not to charge with my spears as well, kind of knowing that I'm not going to chew through, well, either these attacks are going to make them run or they're going to then turn and I should get the rear charge. I get 5 on the D3s, but only 1 goes through, so the chariot survives and does have enough range to get into my zombie giant next turn. Although, yeah, that's going to be putting the resilience of this unit to the test, because we'll see if it can survive that. But yeah, as expected, my commander goes down immediately to the Minotaur Lord, and we're not quite able to finish the job, leaving the Minotaur Lord on 3, who turns, and now I'm still pretty scared. Not only that is we've activated, given my opponent the opportunity to activate Blood Fury, which is a weird commander ability because it says +2 attacks this turn only once per battle when wounded. And the only time a commander is going to be wounded is if they're the last unit model left, I suppose, now, because that was another change. I suppose that is maybe more common there, because the only other time is if they're in a fight with an opposing commander, which they were here. So even though we've got a good number of models left here, they'll reanimate. I'm still a little bit scared of what this individual model can do. But we were able to rout the Goatman warriors. That's pretty nice. We turn to try and get the charge there. Opponent comes in to threaten the zombie giant with the Mongol pack, but we are able to kill off the Minotaur Lord, and then the replay stops here, even though the match did carry on. I suspect that the SOVL replay system doesn't quite like when you flee from charges. It doesn't know how to deal with it, because that's exactly what happens here. But from this point on, the game is fairly well decided. We're able to chase these goatmen off the board. My zombie giant turns around, takes the remaining, wound off the chariot, and my opponent is just left with the Mongol pack. We're already ahead on objective points, securing that 50 points on that first turn. So yes, we take a look at the scores. We are able to secure the victory in this one.
Well, that was a close one.
So moving on to this one, it is the same map and it is the same scenario. So one objective close to me on the left here and one slightly further away on the right. We deploy in a very similar fashion. However, this time it is against Dwarves, and actually a really experienced, really good player in solo one. So expecting some amount of shooting, I attempt to hide these walls behind the cliff here and screen these off behind these units. As we take a look at my opponent's list, there is a fair amount of shooting. They're running the Ranger Captain with 10 Rangers. Got some shooting with the Stone Thrower and a short range shooting from the Flying Machine, but otherwise 10 Miners and 10 Berserkers. These Miners are already sitting pretty on the objective there. Now, here I wanted to mention something about Unholy Vigor, because I do cast it on the zombie giant here, but something maybe I could have done, and it's a little kind of almost trick you can do, or something to look out for, is while most spells, I think all spells and abilities in the game last until the end of the turn, Unholy Vigor increases your movement until your next combat, and that also obviously increases the distance that you can charge. So one kind of nice sneaky thing you can do is move a unit so it is outside of charge range. Your opponent continues on, it continues their turn, and then towards the end of the turn, then pop Unholy Vigor, and all of a sudden you're opening up a charge at the start of the next turn. So if you kind of haven't seen it before, it can take you by surprise. So just something to be mindful of if you're playing either with or against undead. So I maybe could have done something like that here. Instead, I do like to get a bit greedy and threaten the flank of my opponent's commander's unit, knowing that they still have this Flying Machine to move. I'm half hoping I could maybe cut them off with the walls, I think, but then in hindsight that's not going to happen. But reason that regardless, I don't actually mind this matchup, and indeed they do move into a position where they are going to be able to charge my rather exposed flank. But me moving the walls up does expose them to some shooting. And as we exchange blows, I feel like here already, starting to feel that we're in a bit of a precarious situation, because my kind of fast moving punchy units are just getting shot off already, and otherwise we're just left with these pretty slow moving, not that great, not that punchy at least, units, even with Raised Dead and Hex of Ruin. I think they're going to struggle to grind through or struggle to win combats at the very least against these defense 5 dwarves. So I think as Flying Machine and the Zombie Giant kind of exchange blows, again I'm happy with this matchup, but it's going to take the Zombie Giant a while to get the job done there. I decided to go for these charges. I'm not all that hopeful that this is going to be a good combat for me, but I'm hoping. But yeah, I'm in a situation here where if this game continues on its same trajectory, I am going to lose. So I'm trying to do something a bit risky here. I'm hoping with this, with Hex of Ruin, I could maybe make them flee and then get the flank charge into the Ranger Captain's unit. So I also charged this one lone wolf in, partly to secure that, partly also to, even if this dies, which it would die to shooting anyway, it's still preventing this unit, or robbing this unit from a turn of shooting and moving. So let's see, yeah, we put the Hex of Ruin on the miners there. Let's see if it's going to pay off. As they continue to exchange blows down there. This wolf goes down as expected, and then, no, I mean, only so much Hex of Ruin's going to do when you can only roll 2 hits. So from this point on, I'm kind of hoping to get lucky, whittle these units down and just have them survive. But I think I'm down, well now, certainly to 1 or maybe no raised deads and only 1 Hex of Ruin. While Hex of Ruin is really great against, you know, for the, really important, I should say, for this army, for some of the weaker units to punch through high defense units. It kind of reaches a limit when, you know, everything really needs to be hexed in order for you to win those combats. So as this plays out, kind of as you'll expect. One other thing I do want to mention is I'm running Raised Dead, and I think this game did make me think about running Reanimate instead, or wishing I had Reanimate instead. And if you didn't know, Raised Dead is, as you see here, D3 plus 3 models, but can only be used on a zombie or skeleton unit. Reanimate is slightly weaker. It's D3 plus 1 wounds, but can be used on any reanimated unit, which includes the catapult and includes the giant. I kind of reasoned that most of the time I'm going to be targeting the skeletons anyway, so I'd go for the stronger D3 plus 3 option. But here I think it would have been really useful to cast on a giant to let that survive just 1 or 2 more turns. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you would be running in this situation. But yeah, as we look at scores for this one, good game, really tough one against the tanky dwarves there.
That was fun. Off. Good. We'll do it again sometime.
Let's jump straight into this next one, because my opponent is also running an undead list, although centered around a big scary unit of the Vampire Knight with Dread Knights. It's kind of surprising how much else they're able to fit in. I feel like got the better of me in these opening sequences. This was interesting because my corner was able to touch the Vampire Knight here, so I was able to get into the flank. However, these walls were able to stay outside my charge arc. It looks like this, while still being closer, which I understand it's because it's like the corner coming out here is slightly further than the front here, but so it doesn't feel right. It's like, how can I charge these, not charge these, but these still, you know, be able to intercept? And in the middle here, after all the kind of charges were set, I decided just not to charge my walls in. But let's just kind of maybe like play through this one, because yes, I'm happy up here. The giant should take care of these walls. I'm not worried about this although I'm slightly worried about the centre. And there is one objective in the middle here. And I think both of us kind of playing undead in the mindset of like, you want to get on that objective and then just like not be shifted off. So this is going to be the focus. And now the die is cast. This is pretty much going to be the focus for the whole game. Unfortunately, and this is just a really strange situation. It's going to be a real slobber knocker. You can tell that already. The weird thing here is, it's going to be pretty hard for me to actually deal proper damage to the zombie giant. Yes, we've got a good number of attacks, but skill 2, power 3, it's going to be like, I suppose the zombies 2, but it's going to be 4 up, then 2 ups, I suppose. Well, 4 ups re-rolling because of the putrid stench, and then 2 ups every time. So there's a weird situation where focus is really how much can these other units deal in order to win the combat score, in order to force your opponent to crumble. And both of us are running both Reanimate and Hex of Ruin. So it's really it's an interesting battle. It's about not necessarily dealing damage, because it's kind of unfortunate 2 of my units are facing a zombie giant. Necessarily not dealing damage against the target you want, but kind of winning the overall combat and forcing those crumble rolls, and then using your Hex of Ruins and Reanimates strategically. All of that, though, would be kind of mute if this big scary, and by the way, I added it up, I think this is like 255 points. One of the most expensive things you can run in the game, I think, probably, of unit here. Facing down my 80-point giant, 9 wounds left. None of this is going to matter if this unit can just steamroll through and come and get involved. So let's just kind of play it out. I use one Reanimate there. Well, yeah, let's play it out. I think the main thing we want to see here, big test for the zombie giant, is how long can it survive against one of the most offensively sort of statted units in the game. 3 attack, 5 power, 8 attacks from the Dread Knights, 5 power. Lost, I think it was down to 4 when I reanimated there. Maybe 5. But I think you can probably see what I'm getting at here, because despite I think my opponent used some pretty good uses of Hex of Ruin, typically hexing the spear, again, not necessarily because that's the unit they wanted dead, but just so they could get the most number of wounds through within this combat and win on combat score and force those sort of crumbles. So an interesting one. I pull one wolf round here too, because I'm like, well, when the zombie giant dies, at least I'll have one more turn. Now I can recharge. I kind of decided to charge the lone wolf over here rather than try getting it involved in any of these other combats, and kind of glad I did, because now it's freed up. Forgot what I shot at on turn 1 with my catapult. I think it was my opponent's catapult, but is just sitting this one out, just watching the fun. My zombie giant starts just taking them out, still alive, still kicking over there, and we're getting into the dregs of this one, as I'm able finally to take care of the zombies, forces a crumble, zombie giants down onto 2. Final zombie crumbled off, so we can now collapse on their giant, while as we go into the final turn, my zombie giant is still alive. This 80-point unit just totally tanking this 250 plus point unit. It is going to go down, but posthumous, you know what I mean?
Posthumously.
MVP. Really allowed us to win this one, because, as I said, had this come round, and attacked then, we certainly would have lost here. But thanks to the brave sacrifice of the zombie giant, yeah, we're able to take this one.
MVP.
Finally then, let's take a quick look through this one, because for once I'm playing a list that is not incredibly weak to mass shooting. I feel like I tend to favour these lists that are somewhat like fragile, but yeah, you're seeing this one kind of undead just do not care. In this one they do really what undead do best, which is just continue marching forward, getting hit by shots, being reanimated, continue marching forward, things like that. Not much my opponent can do. There is one objective in the middle here, and what's it called? Unholy Vigor on unit of skeletons means I was able to secure that, so we're also ticking up points from as early as turn 1. You may have noticed as well my opponent used Arcane Web on my giant on the first turn, and then on a unit of the wolves on the left. Let me know what you think of that. I haven't had much experience either with or against it, so curious on others' opinions on Arcane Web, particularly since the changes that were a little while ago now, where you can use it twice per battle. Here though you see that my opponent fails their 8-up break test and runs away on the final turn, meaning as we look at the scores, it is the perfect 800 points. That is a maximum you can get in a game, only possible if you control the objectives from turn 1 and your opponent is fielding the maximum 500 points and you complete the table them. So humble brag here, but I've had enough of these shooty elfy lists who just sit back and tear apart my quirky 5 chariot or double devil lists and stopping my fun. So yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this one.
I won! Woof!
And that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of the list. In particular, let me know, yeah, would you be running Reanimate or Raise Dead? Experienced undead players, which I am certainly not. How would you configure your skeletons as well? Would you go for the narrow spears here, or would you do something like wider units with the hand weapons? In terms of the zombie giant, my experience with it so far, it doesn't stand out, I think, simply just because it doesn't deal a ton of damage. But I think that amount of resilience it offers for the mere 80 points, it makes it, yeah, really strong. I don't know if I want to say at this point quite yet that it's an auto-include in every undead list, but certainly, yeah, worth the 80 points. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff to let the YouTube's algorithm know it should recommend it to others. And until next time, bye-bye.